Hi everyone and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today, as you can see, I've made this beautiful doll cake inspired by Alice Through the Looking Glass, and I'm going to show you exactly how to make one for yourself. So let's get started. To start with, I'm using 4 7-inch round cakes and I've cut a hole through the middle using a round cookie cutter. And I need to stack them up using some buttercream frosting in between each layer. Make sure as you go along to coat the inside of the cake where the hole is so that the cakes don't dry out. You can use any flavoured cake and frosting for this that you like. Now I'm going to trim the cakes, and Alice really isn't wearing a skirt in the outfit I'm making. They're more like very flared out pants, but today I'm going to shape the cakes into a skirt. Making it nice and narrow is going to help get the right effect so it doesn't look like a big puffy dress. I can keep carving away until I'm happy with the shape, and then I need to cover the entire cake with some more frosting. Today I'm not doing a crumb coat and then a second coat because it doesn't really need it, but if you find your cake is proving to be too crumbly, you can certainly do that. Here I have my Alice doll, and once I've removed her outfit, I need to wrap the bottom half of her body from the waist down in plastic. It's time to start covering the cake, and I have some green fondant here which I've rolled out nice and thin. I'm going to be creating pleats, so the fondant will be slightly overlapping and you don't want thick pieces of fondant. Using a measuring tape, I need to measure how tall the cake is, and it's about 7 inches, so I need to cut strips of fondant to that length and about 1 inch width. Now it's simply a matter of covering the cake with the strips of fondant, very slightly overlapping each strip. My fondant is sticking to the frosting quite well, but if you find the frosting has already started to crust, you can use some water to help it stick on. When I get close to the end, I'm going to cut the strips in more of a tapered shape to reduce the thickness of fondant which is overlapping. Wherever possible with this bottom half of the cake, always cut off any excess fondant. Before moving on, I'm going to place a toothpick under the fondant in the position I want the front of the cake to be, as this is going to help with positioning all of the other decorations nice and front and centre. Using some very thinly rolled out orange fondant, I've cut some tapered shapes which will go on the top of the cake. Once I'm happy with the positioning, I can stick them into place. Now I can slide the doll into the centre of the cake and work on the top of her blouse. Now that I know where the front of the cake is, I can remove the toothpick. Using some purple fondant, I've cut some rectangular pieces which are the same length as the orange pieces of fondant, and I'll position these in between the gaps. Here I'm adding a little extra piece of fondant just to fill out the bottom of her waist so that the next piece of fondant I lay on top sits nice and flat and won't sag into the doll. With another rectangular piece of fondant, I'm going to press it up against the doll to make the blouse, making sure to press it right up against the body. If there are any areas left not actually touching the doll, air will get trapped underneath and these will crack once the fondant dries. Finally, I'll just trim off the excess at the top as well as any under the arms, and then repeat the same process for the back of the blouse. For the sleeves, I've cut a point at the bottom of a piece of rectangular fondant, and once again I just need to press it up against the doll's arms and blend the fondant together at the top. Once the arms are covered, I need to position them exactly how I want, because if I try to do this once the fondant dries, of course it's going to crack. I've made a little collar for the top of the blouse with a narrow strip of fondant which I've cut a little wedge into. I've also cut a long thin strip of purple fondant which I'm going to stick along the bottom of the cake as a border. Using the back end of a knife, I can easily press the fondant into the pleats to make it look nice and seamless. For the decorative collar section of the blouse, I'm using some flower cutters. Any teardrop shaped cutter will be fine, and I've cut them into little individual pieces which I can start to stick around the top part of the blouse and gradually build up a nice pattern. This orange section of the blouse is actually pleated, so I'm going to put some light markings into the fondant with the back of my knife. I've used some tiny flower cutters here to cut a whole lot of little white flowers, and I can use them to decorate the blouse and sleeves, and I've also added some greenery to the pattern with some very finely rolled snakes. Now, using a few gel colours, just the tiniest amount is enough, mixed with some rose spirits or vodka, I'm going to create some watercolours to paint not only the flowers, but also the shapes on the decorative collar. Here, once again, I've mixed some gold lustre dust with some rose spirits, and I'm painting around each of the shapes on the collar, giving it a beautiful regal look. The final touch to this cake is, of course, more gold on the skirt, and I'm carefully painting this onto the very edge of each pleat. I wanted to add a few tiny butterflies as a finishing touch, and the end result I think is quite a spectacular doll cake of Alice through the looking glass. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and will be able to recreate this doll cake at home. Don't forget, if you're not subscribed to my channel, to make sure you click on the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos. I love to get your feedback and hear your comments, so drop me a line in the comments section below, or head over to any of my social media pages and connect with me there. You'll also see other things that I get up to when I'm not behind the camera. Guys, I hope you tune in next time, and as always, thanks for watching.